Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's talk, Primal Engineering Instincts. It sounds primal. It's a talk that started a couple of months ago when I was told that the labor market right now for software engineers is primarily about specialized software engineers, someone who are front-end, back-end, DevOps only, testers only, and there's not too much place about full stack developers because they're difficult to get actually. They're difficult to grow. They have higher pace, and it's much easier to rather combine teams, assemble different teams as per demand, rather than rely on very senior software engineers. Not everyone is senior, of course. So I started to wonder, is it really the case? And is it that the market is somehow suppressing the growth of full stack engineers because it's just difficult to grow one? Then another talk, another question came up about collaboration. And I'm a quality assurance person trying to grow as quality consultant. And I believe in collaboration. I believe a lot into the fact that not only testers and developers should collaborate more, or even product developers and testers should collaborate more, but the entire company should collaborate more, work as one team if you want to deliver high quality software fast. So we started talking about involving developers more into the definition of user stories. And I was told that it's not their job to do so. It's product team job to decide what to define the user stories, to decide on priorities. It's the tech lead job to break down the tasks. Developers write code. And then I got very curious. Have we forgotten? We call our Primal Engineering Instance, we call ourselves software engineers. It's very fancy these days. But where did the engineering go? Today I have Ray and Tiger, and we're going to dig around software engineering, what software engineers we like to work with, and really help them, encourage them grow and walk out of their coding boxes, because software engineering is not only about coding. Right. Ray, what do you think? Did the market suppress software engineering today?
Specifically like full stack, like generalists. That's an interesting point. I think that some people would really like to be able to recruit, just people that can do everything. But there's been such an explosion of technology that you could see where, if I was a front end engineer, like I would consider myself a full stack developer, but the front end part of that is a little light. Like a real front end specialist has just so many different like JavaScript tools and everything that they've learned. But I guess my best interpretation of the question is people have a little too much fixation with matching the exact skill set to the technologies they have, rather than trying to be able to train and mentor people, to be really focused on getting good at ramping up people, because you're never going to find like the exact combination of the 10 technologies you're using. But if you're good at sharing knowledge in your organization, then that just continues to pay dividends no matter who you have.
It's amazing that you mentioned this, because it's exactly something that I've been thinking this week about, that I'm looking randomly at job descriptions and doing interviews randomly, rather to get more information and to find a job. But I see that companies are really looking for exact match. We need Java automation engineering lead. You might have some experience with Python or C#, but we really need someone with Java, and I've been asking, why is that okay, fine, I can get around it for a month or two, not grasp the entire Java technology, right? But it's automation project anyway, because they want quick return of the investment. They don't want, and especially if you're more senior, they wouldn't they want to plug and play, get in there, get into the team and start building frameworks and tests and anything. Tiger, what would you say about engineering specialization and executing tasks rather than inventing tasks?
Like when it comes to specializing, I think it's good. Specializing in a particular, perhaps area, field, I would say, or even a technology, depending on what technology it is. But I think one thing that people should do is learn, skills that stick with you, even if you decide to move on to a different technology. So an example would be you're working as a front-end developer and you're doing web development. You start learning Angular, for example, which is a framework. You learn that, you work with Angular, etc. And then eventually you move on to React, right? For whatever reason, new job, new company. But it can be a bit tricky, like switching to React or learning a new framework. But instead, if you take your time to learn about the web specifically, like if you take your time, if you step back, you learn about the web, how hydration works, the different browser APIs, and that sort of stuff. I think that will transfer into multiple frameworks depending on which direction you decide to go. So I think people are very focused on technology and learning the latest, the fanciest thing, but not learning the fundamental things behind those technologies, whatever that may be. It doesn't even have to be web frameworks. It can be other things. Learning those and making sure, because they are the ones that are actually going to stick with you.
So rather focusing on how software works and how it is built, regardless so much of the exact technology, because it could be different in every company. Every tech lead has their own preferences, probably. We're getting into one of my favorite questions then. What software engineers need to grow, need to do the best, to really flourish in a company?
I think.
Okay, thank
you. No, sorry. No, I'm really passionate about professionalism in software engineering, and one of the things I think what software engineers really need to be successful is to really change their mindset from I'm just writing code and working software is enough. But I think they should change their mindset to be to think I'm a part of this company and my goal is to help this company succeed by delivering value to customers. And that includes obviously a lot of things, making sure that you write tests, working software is not enough, making sure that you continuously learn and improve your craft. And there are other things involved, sharing knowledge, being a good teammate, having the team mindset. I think this is one of the things I think is super important and that really differs from a good teammate and someone who's a good software engineer is that they have the team mindset. But that, I mean, your work or anyone's work is the team's work. So for example, if you finish a task, is the first thing you do pick up a new task, or is the first thing you do, look, do my teammates need help? And I think this is this really, I mean, it doesn't even have to be software engineering, but this really differs good teammates and bad teammates. And software engineering is obviously a team sport, or in most scenarios, if you're not an indie hacker or whatever else. So I think that is something that's extremely important to keep in mind. To be a good teammate is something that you need to succeed in software engineering. Yeah.
Right. How do you feel about building great software engineers as a company, as a culture?
So I think what I said earlier about, learning being a first class part of what you do is really important. There's this notion of production pressure, right? The just sort of tacit or explicit pressure to do nothing that does not produce output. And that is really damaging, not only to quality, but also to whether you've got people that are actually becoming people that have 5 years of experience versus people that have 1 year of experience 5 times. So really,
I completely agree there.
Yeah, this is something that has to be, just driven in. People need permission to reflect, to get better. If something's bad, not to just like keep bumping into it, but actually get in with problem solving. So that needs to really be supported, and then just real clarity on what the goals and the values of the business are. Like what are we trying to accomplish, and then giving room for problem solving, on creativity, on how we're going to do that. What you mentioned earlier about do engineers just break down the tasks that the stories are handed to them, like that's kind of a destructive viewpoint to being able to really thrive as a problem solver, right? Because it's quite possible you might have some better options if you add a dialogue. So a collaborative environment where people are willing to halfway step beyond their role in terms of making sure all the dots are connected is really also something I value, right? Like, not that everything is everyone's job, but that everyone is trying to just empathize with their ecosystem.
Yeah, I completely agree there. Like, everyone is taking responsibility and making sure that the team does deliver value to the customers. And one of the things I really like with our company is that we strive to have a product trio where the product designers and engineers, we collaborate on a lot of different things. So we don't really have the top-down approach, which is like the product collaborating with the designers, or the product talking to designers, hey, design this thing. Once the design is done, the product takes that and then just share that with the engineers and be like, hey, code this up. So I'm a big fan of collaboration. I genuinely believe that it's extremely important to develop quality software, because software engineering in the end is a team sport. So I think that's super important. You mentioned something about learning, and I think it's super important. And learning should be, one of the values of a company. Learn and making sure that the people learn and invest in the people, because they can not just build better software, but also if they learn the good skills and practice those skills, they can become more productive as well. But I think one thing, as professional software engineers, they should take ownership. So if they realize that something isn't as it should, or if they have feedback on something, they should step up and say that, hey, I think this should be different. Hey, I need some more time for learning, or whatever else, or I think we need to learn more together, whatever that might be. And obviously, you can start to reflect on that, how that ties back to customer value. For example, if everyone's skills improve in X, Y, and Z, and that leads to increased team productivity, that means that we can ship quality software sooner, which is like, shipping value sooner, delivering value sooner. Yeah.
Very, very great points. Let them think. This is what I usually would say. Let them think and let them play together in order to come up with but a solution that the entire team is proud of. And when you mentioned learning, I've been literally told by a CTO that you're not here to learn, you're here to work. So that's really something. What to do then? We're a team, a tester, an engineer, DevOps. We imagine we have the product and the designer. We are told you're not here to learn, you're here to work. How
this is knowledge work. There's a reason they call it knowledge work. Like, trying to do knowledge work without learning is like trying to build a wall without bricks. Like, it's a non sequitur. It's really, it's sad that someone in a leadership position, though, it's unsurprising, it is sad that someone would say something like that. If you're asking what to do more than the reaction, then that's another question, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I think you could elaborate why learning is necessary to increase the customer satisfaction. And I think one thing that already stands out is, as mentioned, if the team learns and they build not just better software, but they're more productive, so they ship better software sooner, which means delivering value sooner. That's going to increase the customer satisfaction, which which ties back to the business, the success of the business. So I think that is something people should always elaborate and go back to how something helps increase the customer satisfaction, how something helps with delivering value. And I think that is very convincing, because the company, they want to be more successful. And I think learning, it's important, but I think you should find a routine. It's better to do something, let's say 2 hours every week, instead of never doing something. And obviously, if you calculate that, you have a year, 365 days, and then times 2, that's like 700 hours of learning, whatever that may be. But yeah, that's
And
how I
what
would
do you
elaborate that
think
point.
about these practices and learning, sharing, knowledge sharing? I've always only met engineers that complain that there's not enough knowledge sharing, and they're so easy to implement in both startup companies and huge infrastructure in enterprise companies. The scale doesn't matter. You can do it with one team, you can do it with 2 engineers, you can spread around if anyone's interested, and still it's so difficult to start. Who starts this? Where this knowledge sharing and engineering growth initiatives should start from?
I think you nailed it, actually. It can start from 2 people. Find someone, yourself, find someone, and start a meeting, invite people, and be like, hey, we're going to talk about this. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to have a kata session, whatever that may be. And, invite people, and then, share the experience, right? Because every time there's something good going on, people might feel left out. So they might be curious. Okay, hey, what's actually happening here? I'm seeing you guys are having fun. And they might be interested in trying it out and joining. So I think, starting small is better than never starting, right? Yeah, that's what I would say about that point.
I agree that an individual contributor absolutely can get the ball rolling any number of ways. If they're they might not like you to say in stand up, yeah, I'm going to be off reading books for the next 3 days, but if you're working collaboratively with someone, if you just put a meeting on, like, hey, I'm going to be mobbing today, pop in if you like. I mean, I've had that happen where I just literally just said, okay, I'm going to start doing it, after I wondered, how do I get them to try mob programming? Like, I'll just do it one day. And then 7 people came. And then now I'm at a different company now, and they're still mobbing, right? So that's certainly something that can happen. Or other things like, I'm doing, like I mentioned, this Kubernetes course today. Like, I posted in the team Slack that I was doing it. Like, this is something that's happening, and get people interested. That said, the extent to which the culture values deliberate learning and deliberate practice is something that is very much created by leadership. So it's absolutely not sufficient for them to just say, well, individuals could take the lead on that if they wanted, because there are all these pressures that are created. And unless that's, unless another value that is instilled is we do take time for improvement, then it's very difficult. It's kind of like punching sand for these individual contributors to really get the ball rolling. So top down is still a big factor. It's not enough.
Yeah, completely agree.
We value learning, right? Everybody would say that, but then there's no time for it, and it's just on paper, right?
Yeah. I wanted to add one point that you mentioned, that your previous team is still mobbing, and I think this is one of the qualities of a good software engineer, is that what you leave behind also matters a lot. Not just the code, but the culture. Helping building the culture and taking initiative and leading by example. I think in this case is phenomenal, and like I think this is something a lot of software engineers in today's age don't really bother about. It's like, I work here and then I move to the next company and make more money. but whatever happens to the previous company, I don't care. And I don't think that's professionalism. I mean, you have been working, you have written code, you have contributed, you have been a part of whatever the customers for that particular product see. So I think that's super important. What you leave behind is really your legacy, like your short-term legacy for that company. So I think that's such an important point that Ray brought up.
Yeah, at a certain experience level, like you're brought on because you're supposed to be making decisions that have a long-term impact. And you only learn that by seeing the long-term impact other people's decisions and your decisions have had. I absolutely agree.
What happened? Did you just drop?
No, I was done with my point.
Yeah, it was kind of unexpected. All right, awesome. We really that was really the direction where I wanted this talk to go. What do we need to flourish as software engineers, and what type of software engineers? I want to take another perspective here that I'm kind of worried about. Have technologies made us negligent a little bit negligent? Not call it lazy. No, don't want to offend anyone, but given the constraints, we don't have time for high fidelity solutions. We don't have time to think first. We don't have time for testing. These are the tools. We have decided on the infrastructure, just go and code. And you can do CI/CD, change and fix bugs all the time. We'll fix it later if someone complains. All of these mindset. This is a complex environment we work in. That's why I'm touching different points of it. But have developers and engineers 30 years ago were more careful about the quality of their work.
I think what stands out to me already is the book Modern Software Engineering, which I recently finished. And the book speaks about going back to defining what software engineering is, what it is, and then how to be successful in it. So it says that we have to be experts in learning and we have to be experts in managing complexity. And I find it really exciting because reading the book, it really stood out to me that in today's age, we have all the acronyms, Agile, Scrum, whatever else. And then we also, there's solid principle, there's the GRASP principles. We have all these fancy technologies. And we're really in a time where, you could say that between the year 1990 and the year 2005-ish, 2010-ish, was a time where people sort of had to think more because they weren't really, you could say they weren't really in the problem that we're in today's age, where it's very easy to get blinded by all of these things going on, all the buzzwords and so on and so forth. So it was really a time where, things had to be thought, things had to be innovated, going back to those earlier days, like test-driven development, for example. So I think I think we need to question things more. And reading the book, I also learned that I need to question things I like more myself. For example, test-driven development. Like, that is not a silver bullet. That is something we do now. That is something really many of us love now, but it is something we should continuously question. And we should be humble and we should be open to learn newer ways for whatever context. But yeah, that's just something that stood out, you bringing that up.
What would you say?
Sorry, go ahead.
If you had to run your punch card once a week, would you be more careful rather than just try fast, fail fast?
Those are the people that brought us the Y2K bug. So I don't know. Like, we talk about designing for the future. They're putting dates in two characters, but they're different times, different constraints. I'm not convinced, as you can probably tell, that software development was ever great. We've got a lot of problems now. We had a lot of problems before. Certainly it's a lot. We've got a lot of enabling things for productivity now that give us these things we ship with a ton of libraries that we have to understand. Like, there are aspects now that are really concerning, but I think the overarching issue is that software engineering has not fully emerged as a profession. Like, I don't think that was ever the case, where you could say that software engineers had a generally prescribed like standard of care that they understood and agreed on. So every time I want to talk to someone about what the standards of being a software developer are, I've got to start from the ground up. Do we agree that automated testing is good? Do we agree that working people overtime all the time means they make more mistakes? Like you've got to start, from first principles every time, because we have not set our baseline standards of professionalism. These things are still just barely emerging.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you look at other industries and professions, there are all these papers, there are all these requirements and that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, it's super interesting with software engineering. It's really a field where, and I think this goes back to learning, right? We're still learning. I think we're still really, really early on in this industry. I mean, if you look 50 years ago, we're in 2022. If you look back in 1970, people were doing waterfall at the time, which now seems like, we should have never done that process. Waterfall, where similar in other industries where they plan everything in front, and then they go and build it, whatever that may be, if it's a bridge, if it's a house. And that's something, that's the first approach you had in software engineering, because that's what people thought. So and now it looks absurd. Like, why did they do that? This makes zero sense. But yeah, we're still early on, we're still learning. I think that's also one of the beauty with Agile, a feedback-driven approach, and having those short feedback loops, because you're constantly learning, whether that's about what you're working delivers value, about the technology, whatever that may be. But yeah, it's really a field of learning.
Well, in other industries, you will not release any product without QA, right?
Yeah.
You will never buy a phone as a device if you knew it was never tested. And well, we don't know why, but some burned a couple of years ago. But we found it ridiculous. It could never happen. Well, it's not the case with software, right? We do that every day. We call it probably agile, or I don't know what we call it, but an MVP. But we do that. And that's also part of the question. If we don't have time to think, if we don't have time to test, how to fight it again as software engineers? Is it our job to say no to this and to not make a compromise with quality, to really be involved in early stages in the definition of the priorities, in the definition of the roadmap, or it's not our job?
So when I talk about us having a profession, that's exactly the distinction that I'm talking about. Is if we don't have a profession, then we don't have an obligation to uphold a standard of care. I consider myself a professional. There are things that I will not ship even if told to. And there are things, directives that I have said, we're not doing this. And I think, if you have a professional standard, that means that if you're somewhere that's not meeting them, either, your role is now partly to help get there, or you need to the extent that you're able, find a different job. Like, not everyone has equal options in that department, but to me, you don't have a professional standard if you're not willing to put up or shut up. That doesn't mean, hey, everything's got to be absolutely perfect. I'm not talking about the best practices. I'm talking about the baseline. But I do think there is that obligation because society is built on software.
I completely agree. I think it's really, team by team, what they agree on. For some people, working software is enough. In my previous company, people would fix bugs and without test and merge them and having shipped. And eventually, I started off as a junior, and it kind of seemed normal. But eventually, as I started learning more, reading books, I was like, this is, this should never have happened, right? Because if we include tests, we prevent, bugs from happening in the future. And it's something, it's really team by team. But I do believe, trying to look objectively, there are things that, are non-negotiable, in my opinion. For example, testing the behavior of a software that it works for for the customers, from the user's perspective. I think that's super important. And I think that's a part of the baseline, what's good enough, so we can ship the software with confidence.
How to put that in practice? How to encourage developers be more involved, more engaged in the first phases?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think this is probably something that you have to bring up and have a meeting around and say that, hey, we have to have an agreement around this, and also like bring up, what the job is like from the beginning. I think before you even bring it up, you can start talking about the problem, right? So let's talk about, we want to deliver value, but we also want to make sure that whatever we have delivered now still delivers in the future. So we don't want bugs to creep in and so on and so forth. And if they do, we want to catch them before we ship whatever we want to ship. If it's a bug fix, if it's a feature, whatever that may be. So I think you need to bring up the problem with the way you are developing software and how that affects the customers and the way you deliver value to them, and why the way you would do it is safer, more productive, short and long term. You really need to begin with the problem and how that affects the customers, because the customers relate back to the business. So that's something that I think is super important to bring up to begin opening people's mind, to be convinced about working in a different way.
Where this question comes from? Again, same company, two different teams. One of the team, the two of the senior engineers, were always watching the support channel. They didn't ask, is it a priority? Is it not? They see a complaint from the product or from the business team, they go and fix it, they move on with their job. These were the two most senior engineers in the company. And then the other team, not so senior engineers, they said, we don't want to waste time with the support channel. We have tasks in the sprint. What is this? Is it the problem with the methodology? You have tasks in your sprint, you have committed to them, you have to deliver. I'm the product manager, I will define how you deal with support issues. Or what? It was a real situation. I didn't find the answer for it. How it was that these two senior engineers never bothered to mention anything about it, and the other team that they needed a very strict process to follow in order to join these support routines.
So it sounds like just the North Star was different. The instincts were different. Because you could imagine this being improved at any link in the chain. Obviously, if their product manager were telling them exactly what, or project manager, as the case may be, were trying to instill this, that could help. But at the end of the day, it sounds like some of these developers didn't understand what they were there for, which was to deliver value to users. So the feedback loop of whether your code is working when users are using it is more important than whatever the story points in the sprint say. Like, you have to understand what your purpose for existence is. If you don't understand that, no amount of process, good or bad, is going to just magically instill that in you. You have to know what the goal of the whole operation is, and the process can enable that, or it can encumber that, but it's not going to tell you what your North Star is.
That's such a good point. You really need to question, I think on both sides of the developers, like the developers that were working in the sprint and the one fixing it, like, you as a developer, you should question the work you're doing. How does this create user value? And are there any other work that I could do that is more important and that would create more user value? And I think you have to question that, and you even have to question why we're doing sprints. Like, you really have to question all of these things, because in the end, our goal is to deliver user value, and we have to be able to prioritize what creates the most value. or as best as we can, obviously.
Keep an open mind. That's I would try to summarize it like this. Don't
I would
go
say, I would say keep an open mind, but I would also say be skeptical.
right.
Be skeptical, question a lot, and be aware that we all do mistakes. We're humans. Every team does mistakes, so question a lot, and don't be afraid of questioning things, even if they seem like this is the correct way, this is the right way. And I also think, looking back throughout human history, that is how scientists have and innovators have figured things out, is by questioning things that seemed obvious, that seemed like silver bullets. And I think that is something that a lot of us are lost in today's age, where because of all the acronyms, because of the silver bullets, we accept things very easily, especially when there is someone we respect, someone who's more experienced than us, say that, or when we read something somewhere from some famous blog post, whatever. But I think that's one of the qualities that we have lost, that we had perhaps in the earlier days, especially around the year 1990 to 2000, especially around that year as TDD came out, as people start talking about Agile. This was really a time where people tried to figure things out. We are still obviously figuring things out, but I would say the emphasis on that isn't as high as it used to be. And it's really a quality that some go their entire career, or maybe like 10 years in today's age, without really questioning or asking the things that they're doing and why they're doing it.
Too many easy answers are out there. You can just find top 10 things you should do to become this or that or to solve this problem, which are usually not top 10. They're not 10 at all, and they're not solving anyone but click bites, right? Critical thinking is what we're kind of getting forgotten a little bit because of so many easy answers out there. Even today, we're talking about what makes a good software engineer. Someone would say, okay, I read this and I become the best software engineer out there. Thank you so much for bringing this up, because it's really a primal engineering instinct for me too, to question, to keep questioning, to not, oh, this is what was written in there. I've heard it so many times. It was written in the requirements like this. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense. Yeah, but it was written, the product manager decided so. And there were clearly difference between the requirements and mockups, or half of it missing, obviously. It was not written in the requirements. What about thinking?
I think, sorry.
No, please go.
No, speaking about programming, I think the top-down approach is also something, a lot of teams are suffering from, not having the collaboration trio, as mentioned, between the designer, engineers, and product managers, but it's more of a top-down approach where things get sent from the top down, and the engineer's job is just to put their head down and write code, which is not, the job of the engineers. Their job is to deliver value and make the customers happy. And to do that, they have to take ownership, and they have to step up and make sure that is what happens. Making sure that okay, this user story, why are we doing it? How did this get validated? What was the story behind this? The user testing, and so on and so forth. Obviously, not everyone is going to be in such a team, but I think if you are a software engineer and you're able to change that, that's like one of the greatest things you can do, is change something for a team, the foundational ways they work, that will help them to now and forever. So I think if you're able to do that, you should be really proud of yourself. That's something, amazing. But again, because just wanted to bring up the top-down approach.
Did remote work helped in losing our engineering instincts and questioning things and working collaboratively because we were isolated?
Well, the world was just collectively upset and frustrated and depressed. So that got conflated with remote work for a lot of us for the first year and a half or so, right? That's not the overall experience remote work can be. I think I miss being around people. I miss being around my team, the adjacent teams, being able just to like walk over to their table. Though that said, like there are teams that would have been further away in a different floor, in a different building, in a different city, that now are kind of equally reach outable. They're on Slack like everyone else is. There are opportunities here. I just don't think we're good at remote work yet. So I would say, like, yes, so far, some people have metrics that say it helps. Some people have metrics that say it hurt. I think, like, so far, probably in a lot of cases, it's hindered. And also, it's a brand new thing we're not good at yet.
I think there's a lot of challenges with remote work. I think there's a lot of pros with that, which I really love. But I think one of the challenges, and I think our team is still struggling with it, is working collaboratively. I think that's and that will for a long time be a tough challenge, where if you're in an office, you can just go over to someone and be like, hey, or even, what's exciting about working in an office is that if you're struggling on something, collaboration will just come up naturally, right? Like you'll be struggling on something, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, and someone sees that, they will come in and they will help you out. And it's not like you have to struggle for 3-4 hours and then shoot a question on Slack and then wait an hour and then get an answer, and then having that ping pong. Obviously, it depends how quick it is, but I've been in this situation in my previous company where I struggle on something for 3 hours, shoot a question on Slack, get an answer after 2 hours, while I'm still struggling on this thing. And I think it's really hurting the productivity of the team. And I think we still have a lot of work to do there, figuring out ways to enhance the collaborative environment remotely. One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is, I mean not just the days, but the months and years, because I'm really trying to I'm really passionate about collaboration as someone who loves extreme programming, and embrace change, and also the philosophies and practices around that, especially around collaboration, peer mob programming, and so on and so forth. One thing I've been thinking a lot about is how we can make remote work become naturally collaborative, and I think that's a challenge that we're still figuring out, and a challenge that it's going to take a while to figure it out, especially when you have a remote team across multiple time zones. It's a bit difficult. So it's something that I'm really thinking a lot about lately, and also how, even if we are working async, how to make that efficient. Obviously, it's a team by team scenario, but yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about. How we can make that the remote environment.
Continue the talk, because I'm thinking heavily about this for the last 2 years, probably myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to be our next conversation. We might come up with a solution.
Maybe. Yeah. No, but I think the ping pong pain, especially, is one of the biggest pains in remote work, where you shoot a question on Slack, someone comes back an hour and a half later with a question to your question, you answer that question, and then 3 hours later they come back with something else. It's really hurting the team productivity, and it's something that I think we need to change as soon as possible in our industry, and figuring ways. I'm still thinking a lot about this, working effectively remotely. I'm just thinking now as well, like it's such a tough problem to solve.
I talked about why collaboration is fast, and I stated all over that it is faster than asynchronous work, and it's much faster to spend 2 hours together instead of 2 screen scrolls of comments and questions and back and forth. What did you mean? Did you mean that? Did you mean the other thing? This is the nightmare right now with remote. It's not only with remote work, because honestly, in my career, I've only worked with international teams. We've been remote. Before remote was a word. And there are ways to do that. I don't know, morning coffees. For me, it's one of the solutions. And afternoon lunch or beer, just spend time together. It's not impossible. it could be really on a human level connection, doing it through the computer. There are ways, so we need to talk about that. Ray posted something interesting in chat. In the beginning of the talk, we talked about team topologies, remote team interactions workbook from the authors of team topologies. Everyone who's interested in collaboration and in effective ways of building teams, find this book and these guys. They're awesome. Ray, could you just share a little bit more about them, because I'm really a huge fan of team topologies myself.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It started out with the DevOps topologies webpage, just explaining, different ways that DevOps teams are laid out. And then they actually did a deep dive, did a bunch of cognitive science and stuff, and put out the team topologies book talking about the 4 different categories of teams that, work at scale in different situations. And it really was eye-opening, saying, oh yeah, this team over there was really trying to be this, and so on, different ways these different team types fit together. I've read that. I haven't read their new one about remote team interactions, but if it's, any gauge from their previous work, I think it's really worth a look. If anyone has figured this out, I think we're all still figuring it out, but if anyone is ahead of the curve, it would be them.
Nice. Yeah, no, I'm super excited about this thing. Like, it was really worth coming here. Like, I'm super excited about that video and the book about team topologies too. I was checking out the reviews while you were talking. Like, they seem to have some good reviews as well.
Yes.
Seems like a really cool book.
It's,
yeah, I think one thing that could reduce the remote pain is, for example, around pull request. There's a ping pong pain there sometimes, and I think one thing that could make things much clearer is having a pull request guideline. And one thing that it's something that we're starting in our company. We're starting this first, having questions around it, and then eventually that will lead to a draft. But one thing I think is super important is keeping the cycle of reviews as minimal as possible. And someone replied, so someone had a point saying that I think it's up to the reviewers and authors how many cycles of reviews they want to go. And I said, yeah, but I think there should be maximum 1, kept as minimal as possible, because I want, as someone who cares about the whole entire team and the work we do, and I want us to be productive, I want, I don't want PRs to go through multiple cycles of acing ping pong and reviews, because that's just going to slow us down as a team as a whole. And the person agreed on that, and I think we will hopefully have a point where we say, keep the cycle of reviews as minimal as possible, and avoid the ping pong pain, perhaps. And I think there are other things you could document, perhaps. Another thing which we do in our company is we have an internal Stack Overflow. So if you have a question, you throw it on Stack Overflow, and then we have like a Slack notification that happens, and then you can just ping someone. Of course, how many you want, or ping maybe 2 people, they answer it. So if someone else has a similar question again, they can start by going to Stack Overflow and see if the question has already been asked.
Internal knowledge systems are a great solution for many problems, and they're good practice. It's good practice to share the knowledge, to structure it in a way that's useful for the rest, to organize it in terms of information. It actually helps changing the way you build software too, because it's all about information, presenting information somehow. And these knowledge systems are very, very useful. And something that you mentioned about the review cycles, it's something I'm very, I care a lot about. If it's up to me, I would remove the term review in general. It should be all collaboration. Sit together,
completely agree.
And review should be active review, not asynchronous review. And also something I've been trying to promote is the notion of asking for feedback rather than waiting for feedback, because waiting is one of the strategies of software development, and waiting for feedback is the worst. It's the slowest ever. So yeah, what you're trying, I would fully support. It should not be up to the author. Spending waiting for something to be in review for a couple of days is it's already a symptom for something that
Definitely. It's a team. Yeah, it's a team's responsibility getting it merged, and I think it's the reviewer's responsibility driving the PR forward and getting it merged as well. Yeah, and I think I'm not a fan of async code reviews. I'm a fan of peer reviews. So like even if I'm not peer programming, I'm pushing up a pull request. What if someone reviews that? I will say, hey, you added these comments. I saw that you reviewed this. You added these comments. Let's hop on a call and go through this together and fix whatever needs to be fixed. Address that and get this merged and eventually ship it. So we don't need to wait. This makes us more productive as a team, as a whole. So I'm a huge fan of collaboration, and I think that's super important if you want to build great software.
Before we end, I enjoyed our talk so much that I could easily, delay the end of it. But you have more things to do, I'm sure, already, and it's a work day for Ray. So before we end, if you think about in your past, what were the outstanding qualities of the best software engineers you've ever worked with? Tiger.
The best, you mean?
A teammate that you would remember because they were amazing software engineers.
I think in my previous company, my tech lead was a really good lead and software engineer. I think one thing that really stood out with him, he was never satisfied with the ways we worked. He was always looking for ways to improve things, and he was never really content. I also think he pushed really hard for the knowledge sharing and pair programming and that kind of stuff, and for us to increase our productivity as a team. And I really like that about him, the mentality of never being satisfied and never being content, because there's always room for improvements. And he was always, keen to try things, which I think is, also really good. Besides that, it was a great debugger, really, really great debugger. I learned a lot from him. He was great at writing code, the way he was thinking about problems. So I think, he's really the first person that comes to mind. Obviously, I've worked with great people in my current company, but he's really someone I've seen over and over again show these qualities. I admire that, and I hope to, possess these qualities as well.
Thank you, Tiger. Great person you've had worked with. What about you, Ray?
Well, I think of ownership. I think of people that can deliver in the short and the long term, right? So someone is asking us for something today, or systems going down today. Of course, they're capable of doing that, right? But then also they're looking out for the long-term technical strategy. They're not just shipping something today, making compromises for tomorrow, and they're identifying where, what you might call someone else's mess, but it's really all our mess, might be interfering with our technical or our business goals, and is also finding ways to advocate and to put in time for that. And then also they are able to work with a wide variety of people. They have patience and empathy with people,
which is somehow recently told that it's not how we call it. It's not signature of software engineers because they're introverts and they like to work alone and in silence. But here we are talking about teamwork, ownership. Yeah. Sharing, knowledge sharing, continuous learning, being critical and questioning, and trying to find a better way of building long-term solutions to your today's software problems.
I know, before we wrap it up, sorry, I know we talked a lot about learning, and one thing I want to mention is being humble and acknowledging that you can be wrong. I think if you can't be humble, and I think it's very hard to grow if you have a hard time stepping on your ego and admitting that and understanding that, or even like if you're super defensive to every feedback you get, how are you supposed to know what you need to work on? So I think it's something, just to remember that. And another thing I think is also important to understand your customers and deliver value is the domain knowledge, the domain you're in, learning more about the domain and the knowledge around that. It is also going to help you understand your customers better, which will help you see, which ties back to understanding what delivers value and what doesn't, and so on and so forth.
We've covered it all. I would show you my board with all the thoughts and questions I've collected the last couple of weeks. You mentioned it without me really asking about it. You mentioned it all. It's, as software engineers, we are obliged. We have to some standards of work. We should be proud of ourselves and our work, not really be content and work for the salary, because we would never be happy ourselves like this, probably.
Definitely. Yeah, there's always more money to make. You're so right.
Take care. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was amazing. Thank you for RSVPing my invite. It was really last minute. Thank you so much. I hope it will be useful for anyone who's watching and inspired to really step up and level up our game as software engineers. Take care.